every book that I've read.
You can look at situations and
It changed my life.
One of the funniest books I read was Napalm and Silly Putty by the late George Carlin. It's one of my favorite comics.
Chelsea Handler's Are You There, God? It's Me Vodka, and it made me laugh out loud.
America the Book by Jon Stewart.
I read Chris Rock's book, and I laughed harder in his book than I did when I watched him on television last week.
one of the funniest books I've ever read is Bartleby.
The Shel Silverstein books, A Light in the Attic, Where the Sidewalk Ends.
Any of the books by Sophie Kinsella, like Confessions of a Shopaholic.
When I first started reading Pride and Prejudice, I really immediately sensed the humor that Jane Austen had.
Well, Bridget Jones' Diary, you laugh out loud because everyone can relate.
I just finished reading Candide by Voltaire. Every single page had something just so ridiculous.
P.S. I Love You just brings out a range of emotions from laughter to tears.
There's been a lot of books that have made me cry, but the one that made me cry the most was definitely the 6th Harry Potter. Am I allowed to give away why?
I did cry at Harry Potter book 7, and then I found out that it was the exact same place that J.K. Rowling cried when she was writing it, and then I felt special.
Where the Red Fern Grows is one of the saddest books I've ever read. I was crying like a baby as a child.
I think it was Warm December. It was about an African princess who was suffering from sickle cell before anybody really knew of it. It was a very...
I think the first book that ever made me cry was Old Yeller. I had to keep reading even though I could barely see because of the tears in my eyes.
The one book that I read made me cry. It was called Chani Cinderella.
One of the saddest books I ever read was Grapes of Wrath.
Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt.
I just finished The Time Traveler's Wife.
The Kite Runner was one of the saddest books that I ever read.
One of the saddest books I've read is by Nicholas Sparks, The Wedding.
The Notebook. I think Nicholas Sparks' At First Sight. We both read it and I bawled.
I think my favorite book, and it's sad and everything, is To Kill a Mockingbird. I just think it's a perfect movie and I think it's a perfect book.
Blindness by Jose Saramago is one of the books that I recently read that I found both very sad and frightening.
The Twilight series by Stephanie Meyer actually gave me nightmares.
Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is one of the scariest books I've read.
The scariest book that I've ever read was Stephen King's The Shining.
Stephen King writes books that are very intense.
The scariest book I've ever read was Pet Sematary by Stephen King.
Misery is the only book that's ever bothered me in my life.
Anything Michael Crichton wrote, like The Andromeda Strain, freaked me out when I was in 8th grade.
I read Congo when I was younger. I didn't like the monkeys killing people. One of the scariest books I ever read was this book I read in middle school called The Nest. It's about killer cockroaches that get inside of people and then eat them alive. It's like one of the coolest things I've ever read.